Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back to the LOBLOLLY Pines Publishing Podcast. This is the first episode of 2026. Okay, nope, I was expecting some kind of a celebratory sound, but alright, we'll just move on. This actually should have been the... Okay, nope, yep, there it is. There it is. Okay, we got... Come on, guys, New Year, we gotta be better. This actually should have been the last episode of 2025. But if you were waiting for it to drop in December and were upset to wake up on Jesus' birthday, eagerly went to YouTube and found that Santa didn't leave you a fresh episode, you can blame RALPH Ellison and his novel, Invisible Man, for the delay. Shame on you, sir. Shame on you.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
You'll soon understand what I mean, but of course, before I get into it, this is the part where I remind you that if you appreciate literary reviews such as this, tell the algorithm by liking and subscribing to the channel. If you want to take it a step further, activate the notification bell to stay abreast. Abreast. You're a father. To all past, present, and future content as soon as it becomes available. Also, I have a book out. It's called Halycon Suicide. You want to know how it feels like to have your mind explode into a million pieces? Buy my novel. But you won't, because you're scared. Yeah, I said it. You know what? This strategy for marketing is not working. I don't know how to market myself. Let's just get into RALPH Ellison's Invisible Man. A young African-American man recounts the tale of how he became an invisible man who lives underground in a hole, siphoning electricity from the Harlem city grid. The nameless protagonist's story truly begins in college, carrying the last words his grandfather spoke to him before he passed away. Live with your head in the lion's mouth. I want you to overcome him with yeses, undermine him with grins, agree him to death and destruction. Let him swallow you till they vomit or bust wide open. The nameless protagonist, which for the rest of this review I'll just refer to him as the Invisible Man, interprets these words in an optimistic and idealistic sense and lives his life accordingly, thinking if he worked hard and if he educated himself, he would be seen for who he is individually, not counting the fact that the dangers of the time he was living in, the pre-civil rights era, would be an ever-looming obstacle. However, it is in his time in college where the rug is yanked out from under his feet, sending him cascading downward into his spiritual and existential descent. When chauffeuring one of the school's most prestigious benefactors, Mr. Norton, they run into trouble off campus, and though the Invisible Man is able to get them out of it, the headmaster of his college, Dr. Bledsoe, a fellow African-American man, afraid of losing the power he had amassed under these Caucasian lords, and fearful that the Invisible Man's actions would doom the school and his progress, exiles the Invisible Man to Harlem, New York, under false pretenses. It's while in New York that the Invisible Man's rose-colored glasses, his idealism, his optimism, the very principles to which he firmly grips, are tested as he unwittingly becomes the victim of his naivety, is used by most people he comes in contact with, claiming to want to help or have the answers to his woes, or knows what is better for him, and those who want to indoctrinate others and use the Invisible Man's gift of oration, which helps to inspire hope for a better world, to oppress his own people, while the Brotherhood, as this cabal calls themselves, benefit from their destruction. It isn't until the Invisible Man abandons the chaotic world above for the sewers below that he finally begins to understand the words his grandfather spoke weren't simply about surviving white supremacy and oppression by being a bumbling, buffoonish yes man, but much more. To date, the hardest book I have ever had to get through was The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Invisible Man by RALPH Ellison is the second. Not because it's as dense, nor even remotely as long as The Brothers Karamazov, but because it is emotionally draining. I struggle with reading books about the quote-unquote black experience in America because it hits too close to home, always. Also, they, for good reason, obviously, tend to be humorless, and I'm a person who I like humor injected in all my stuff. I don't need to read about black exploitation and the horrors suffered by black people in my country. I know the history. I know the struggle. I live with the stigma and have faced the discrimination and racism that comes with the color of my skin. When you walk into a room and decisions are made for you, your fate decided for you, your name and identity seized and discarded and replaced with one that doesn't fit, when you're not seen as a person but as a means to further someone else's legacy while simultaneously they deny and actively attempt to erase the violence and bloodshed the legacy is built on, when you speak, it's not simply a representation of yourself. You have to be cognizant of the fact that you are speaking for your entire race, which, I reiterate, is the most ridiculous concept ever created by human beings. When you're not seen at all, I get it. That's why it took so long to read this book. Every chapter is long and complex as the Invisible Man recounts his journey, and every time I finished a chapter, which again was long and exhaustive, I was not eager to continue. But I did. Funnily enough, that's the entire point of the book. More on that later. So as I'm reading this book, reading this story, reading what this invisible man is experiencing, I found myself yelling at him because I can see who he is. I understood what was happening and where ultimately it was all going to lead, even though he didn't see it, and it was frustrating. Not frustrating because it was predictable, but frustrating because I recognized the naivety and the struggle. The naivety in thinking the world is one way and or should function a certain way. And when you finally begin to see the world for what it is, there's the struggle of not only having to accept it, but also having to accept it while somehow holding on to the hope that if you remain principled, you will finally see the change, see the world you thought existed. It's truly a struggle against overwhelming cynicism. The issue is that I understood all of this before I even got halfway through the book. And when I say issue, I don't mean that as a negative mark against the book. I should stress, this book, as hard as it was to get through, is fantastic cover to cover, especially the epilogue. Man, I wish I could just read you the entire epilogue. The entire book is rich with metaphor and symbolism, and the epilogue just confirms it all. It just hammers it home. Invisible Man is the first and only fiction novel written and published while Ralph Ellison was still alive. Though the story of Invisible Man takes place before the Civil Rights era, which was it takes place around the 1930s, the book itself was published in 1952, right at the apex of the movement. Ralph Ellison pulled some of the material for the novel directly from his own experience. Much like the Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison left Alabama in the early 1930s to attend the Tuskegee Institute, which at the time was a prestigious all-black college. But when he got there, he was disillusioned with the institute as he quickly realized that the college was just as obsessed with class as white institutes. Though initially attending for the music program during his time at Tuskegee, he found his love of reading and fell in love with the writings of T.S. Eliot, James Joyce, and the aforementioned Dostoevsky. He would leave the college before completing the requirements needed to graduate with a degree in hand. Ralph moved to New York and became acquainted with one of the greatest, most renowned poets in Harlem at the time, Langston Hughes. And it is through Langston Hughes and some other influential people that Ralph Ellison was introduced to the ideals of the Communist Party, which he felt aligned with the progression of not just Black Americans, but also just the poor people that America was, leaving behind or taking advantage of, or just forgetting altogether. However, he lost his faith in the party during World War II, feeling that the party no longer held firm on its Marxism, but rather replaced it with extreme socialistic views. Ellison wrote Invisible Man as a response to the party's betrayal. Now, you might be wondering, hey, why are you giving me so much background on Ralph Ellison in this book? Well, honestly, I don't know how to review this book. It's good, period. That's it. It's so good, in fact, that I find it weird that it's not on all the top 100 books by American authors lists. This book is nowhere to be found. Is it a fun read? By no means. It's not supposed to be. I feel like Invisible Man is for literary minds, or, the kind of people who love watching movies like Amistad and 12 Years a Slave. I personally don't need to see those movies. I get it. This book is not about those kinds of slaves. It's more Bamboozled by Spike Lee than it is Roots. And if that's your thing, if you like movies like 12 Years a Slave and, you have to visually see this kind of horrific action, then more power to you. I found myself frustrated and horrified by the contents of this book because most of it is still as relevant now as it was in the 1930s. I didn't want to continue reading. I often thought about closing the book and shelving it for something else, but to do that would be the equivalent of putting myself in a dark hole and closing my eyes to the world above, which is not the point of the book. The point of the book is that at some point you have to come out of that hole and continue forward. Even with all you know, you are morally and ethically obligated to be active in society, because change only comes if you contribute to its cause. You can't do that in the darkness. You can't do that with your eyes closed. Not when we're still limping from the weight of the ball and chain we've dragged along for centuries. If you want to know what that means, read Invisible Man. That's it. That's all I've got. I wish I could articulate my feelings on this book a little bit better. I loved this book, but hated every moment of reading it. Does that make sense? That's why it took so long for me to get a review up for it. But here it is. Hope it was worth the wait. If it wasn't, well, that's what the comment section's for. Bitch away. The next book I will be reading is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I've never heard of the author nor the book, but it came recommended by my sister-in-law, and she promises me that the book has humor, and I'm a sucker for humor. And after reading Invisible Man, I certainly need a little less doom and gloom. There's already enough of that in the world at present. If you've made it through the entire episode, thank you for sticking around to the end. As a reward, I will not plug my book, Halcyon Suicide, nor will I remind you to like and subscribe. I won't even tell you to consider hitting the subscribe button. You have earned the right to be spared by the obligatory plugs. You've been listening to the LOBLOLLY Pines Publishing Podcast. I've been KJ Duff. Talk to you on the next episode. Hey, 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 hey. Read books every day. That was for 14-year-old me. You're welcome, buddy.